If a little boy in a devil's costume comes to your door tonight, don't answer. This happened last Halloween, and I wasn't planning on talking about it again. But with tonight being Halloween, people need to know. My wife and I always loved Halloween. Handing out candy, seeing all the kids in their costumes, eating all the leftover candy. It was the one night of the year we got to feel like kids again. The night started out like any normal Halloween night. Lots of doorbell ringing and door knocking. The trick-or-treats, in perfect sync every time the door opened. Just around 8 o'clock, like a record on repeat, we heard the doorbell ring, and I went to grab the bowl of candy. My wife had run upstairs to grab a new bag since we were beginning to run low. A group of children showed up, maybe about 8 of them, all dressed in cute costumes. The parents standing at the edge of the driveway waiting to move on to the next house. Trick or treat. "Oh, I love your costumes," I said as I opened the door. A doctor, a Power Ranger, a teddy bear, all adorable. But there was one costume that stood out. A little boy in a cheap-looking devil's costume. Plastic mask, tiny red pitchfork, candy bag in hand. He was the last kid to open his bag and wait for some candy. The other kids didn't even bother waiting. I kind of felt bad, so I was going to give him a little extra. I had just grabbed a handful of candy and was about to drop it in his bag until he looked up at me and said, "She's fine." My wife was halfway, down the stairs behind me when I turned around and saw her fall down the last few steps. It wasn't a big fall, more like a stumble. "Honey," I said, reaching for her. She caught herself on the handrail. "I'm fine. Don't worry." I turned around back to the door as the kid was catching up to the rest of the group. I stood there confused. Did he say she was fine before she fell? That's strange, I thought to myself. I brushed it off at first. Probably a coincidence, right? I didn't even bother mentioning it to my wife. The night continued on, and we got a bunch more trick-or-treaters. Same routine, trick-or-treat. A candy, smiles, all the normal Halloween activities. Around 09:45, the doorbell rang. I figured this had to be wrapping up. I told myself this was going to be the last group I gave out candy to. When I opened the door, it was just 3 kids. One dressed as a cowboy, one dressed as a police officer, and one in a devil's costume. I gave out the candy just as I had done all night and complimented their costumes in the process. I looked at the devil. "Hey there, buddy. Didn't I just see you a little while ago?" No answer, just held his bag open, staring at me. I dropped a handful of candy in his bag, mostly to just get him moving along so I can close up shop for tonight. "There you go, happy Halloween." As I began to shut the door, he spoke again. "She's sleeping now," I froze in place. My wife had just gone upstairs a few minutes before. She said she was going to lie down because her leg hurt from the fall earlier. But the boy was already walking away, disappearing into the dark. I closed the door and turned off the porch light. Done for the night. I went upstairs to check on my wife. I just felt uneasy after that whole situation. The bedroom door was cracked open. "Hey," I whispered as I pushed it open. "You awake?" Silence. "Honey," no reaction. I stepped closer. My eyes finally adjusted to the dark room. I could see the slow rise and fall of her chest. She was fine. She was probably just exhausted from the day. I loosened up and shook it off and headed back downstairs to lock the rest of the house up. When I got downstairs, I realized how tired I was. I needed a reset before I started cleaning up. I took a seat on the couch to rest. I must have drifted off to sleep on the couch because I was woken up to the sound of knocks on my door. Startled and with my vision blurry, I took a look at the clock. 11:37. What the hell? I murmured to myself. I made my way towards the door and peeked out the window before opening. Nobody was there. The motion light was on, but no body was there. I kept looking out the window for a while just to make sure. I thought maybe I imagined it. Maybe I dreamt it. I didn't have an answer. I made sure the door was still locked and turned around to make my way up the stairs. As soon as my foot hit the first step, I heard again another knock, this time louder. Now I was concerned. Now I knew I wasn't dreaming. I heard the knock, plain as day. I reached for the door and yanked it open in hopes I would catch whoever was knocking in the act. Nothing, just a cold breeze brushing past me. I had a shiver from the cold breeze or the situation at hand, I wasn't sure. I was just about to close the door when I heard my wife screaming. Without thinking, I sprinted up the staircase and burst through our bedroom door. My wife was sitting up, sweating, out of breath. "I had a nightmare," she whispered. "What happened?" "I saw him," she said. "I saw a little boy standing in the doorway." I went over to her and held her, calmed her down the best I could. She looked at me and said, "I don't want to go to sleep right now. I'm scared." I told her it was okay and that we can go downstairs and make some popcorn and watch a movie. We made our way out of the bedroom and down the stairs. It was just then I realized I never shut the door. And that's when I noticed it, the plastic red pitchfork on our welcome mat. We called the police. They searched the house and came up with nothing. I told them what happened, and they chalked it up to some kids playing pranks on Halloween. I still think about that night every day. We don't celebrate Halloween anymore. We refuse to even open. There's no light inside. When I was 13, I went trick-or-treating with my 2 remaining best friends, Stilly and Paul. We hadn't gone the previous year because when we were 11, our other best friend Mark went missing. There'd been some argument that night. We were supposed to be back home by 9, and Mark had wanted to keep hitting houses for more candy. Stilly would have done whatever, but Paul and I were both rule followers. We rarely got into trouble, and that included staying out past curfew. I remember asking Mark to come back with us, but he and Paul had been shit-talking each other, and he was still mad. So he flipped us a bird, made a chicken sound, and headed further away from our side of town. No one saw him again after that. They looked for months, of course. Police investigated. His folks put up flyers and went on local news shows, that kind of thing. And I got interviewed several times because I was the only one that had gotten any message from him at all. It was on my cell phone. My parents had just gotten it for me 2 months before, when I was starting 6th grade, and Mark was my only friend that had one too. That Halloween, they held off until 10 before planning to text him to make sure he'd gotten home. It was as I picked up the phone that it lit up with a short text from his number. I found a new house. I had no idea what he was talking about, and I texted back asking him. There was nothing. I asked if he'd made it home, but nothing else ever came back. It wasn't until the next morning that I knew something was really wrong, and I told my parents about the text. Ever since, well, everything had felt hollow. Our parents hadn't wanted us to go out on Halloween the next year, and we didn't put up much of a fight. Even this year it was half-hearted. My mom had practically pushed me out the door, maybe thinking that getting out with my other friends again, even at Halloween, would help me get past everything. As it was, I just walked along quietly as Paul and Stilly argued about some TV show they'd been watching. We'd stopped at some houses and gotten candy. Sure, but without any discussion between us. Our path had ignored some of our past haunts and pushed into neighborhoods I knew but had never visited for Halloween. Looking up at the sky, I frowned. It was getting dark, and I knew my parents wanted us back before too long. So do you guys want to start heading back the way we... That's new. I looked at Paul and then at where he was staring. It was a large old house crouched at the far corner of the neighborhood we'd been apathetically looting. I raised an eyebrow at him. That house looks old as shit, Paul shrugged at me. Maybe so, but I'm telling you it wasn't there last time I came through here. Never has been. I glanced at Stilly, who mirrored Paul's shrug. I don't remember it either, Jillian. My brother's girlfriend lives down the street, and I don't ever remember something like this here. Frowning at him, I kept walking closer to the house, studying it as best I could in the growing gloom. I didn't remember it either, but so what? The house hadn't sprouted up all of a sudden like a weed. It looked like it had been there for years. Maybe someone moved it here? Like I had an uncle once that moved his house to a different county when he got mad at my grandparents. Like had a truck move that shit. I nodded, absently as I continued to stare at the house. Maybe, but it's all grown up. Why would someone move it just a little bit ago and then not take care of the yard or anything? It seems so. I trailed off as the front door opened and someone stepped outside. It was Mark. Jesus. Is that you? Paul was already running toward him, and Stilly wasn't far behind. I was walking forward too, but more slowly. It felt like I was moving underwater. every step slow and floaty and strange, roaring and pressure in my head and ears. I had almost reached where Paul and Stilly were hugging the other boy, frantically before I realized I was crying. The fuck, man? It kidnap you? Do you need a fucking doctor or something? We can call the cops. And I reached out to touch him, but something caused me to hesitate. He was smiling at them, even laughing a little, but he wasn't answering anything. And his eyes, when they met mine, they seemed strange. Lowering my hand, I took a step back. Where have you been? His face grew serious and he gave me a small nod. Turning, he gestured back to the partially open door he'd just come through. I've been with him. In the shadows beyond the door, I could see a shifting shape. It could have been a trick of the dark, but it looked like a patch of moving black against the black, like animated scratch marks scribbling out a spot in reality. I felt my brain twist just looking at it. A feverish fear clawing up from my belly, trying to escape as a scream. And then the terror was gone. In my periphery, I dimly noticed Paul and Stilly doing the same, tensing up as they began to recoil or run, only to suddenly stop and relax again. Part of me knew it was wrong, that this was all wrong, but I couldn't grasp the feeling or the idea of it. It was all too soft and slippery. And then Mark was talking again. His name is Mr. Crinkle. This is his house. I could see the words in my head as he said them. Crinkle like paper, but with a K house capitalized, just like it had been in his text 2 years before. There was a hot weight to them as they pushed into my brain. He invites you inside too. Something in me froze. I still wasn't afraid, but the sense that something was very wrong grew stronger, while the last of my ability to run or physically resist drained away. I probably looked outwardly calm as I watched Mark take Stilly by the hand and lead him into the house, closing the door behind him. But inside I was screaming. Even when they were gone, me and Paul didn't really move, didn't talk, just stood there like tombstones in the deepening shadows, waiting. Well, waiting for our turn. My thoughts skittered around my skull, terror racing my instincts to understand and survive. Was that really Mark? It looked like him, and yes, I thought it was him, though he was different. He looked bigger and older, just like the rest of us. And he was wearing clothes I'd never seen him wear before. Not a costume, maybe, just a dark hoodie. I wasn't sure. Everything had been happening so fast. The door opened and Stilly came out, followed by Mark. At a glance, they looked the same as when they'd gone in, but that wasn't true. Stilly's face, his eyes weren't soft and sweet and unsure anymore. And when he smiled, there was a hardness that hadn't been there before. It's great, guys. Don't worry. It's not as weird as it seems. Stilly was already reaching out to grab Paul when Mark stopped him. Not yet. It's too soon for you. I'll do it. Just watch. I tried to call out to either warn Paul or plead with Mark, but nothing would come out. Mark seemed to sense it and glanced in my direction before lowering his eyes and grabbing Paul's arm. Without another word, he led him inside to the black thing that waited there. Stilly stayed outside, but he didn't do his normal nervous over-talking thing anymore. He didn't say a word, just stared at me with that nasty grin. It was the same thing when Paul came back out. I was the only one left, and when Mark crossed the yard to me, I felt my throat tighten as I tried again to speak. It was fully dark now, and his face was only dimly visible in the glow of a distant streetlight. Come on, Gil, I'll take you in and show you. You need to see it. It's really something. He flashed that same hard smile the others wore as he took my hand. Something in that moment when he grabbed my hand, I felt the hold on me loosen just a little, enough that I squeaked out a nonsensical question that I didn't expect. Why is it so dark in there? It sounded like a stupid, vague question that could have meant a dozen things, but somehow I knew what it meant, and so did Mark. His expression had already changed slightly when he touched my fingers, and now his face had crumpled into such a look of bleak sadness that I wanted to hug him despite my fears. With what looked like great effort, he met my eyes. Because there's no light inside. Gil. Mark glanced back at the door of the house, open and waiting like a hungry mouth, and then back to me. He gave my fingers a hard squeeze. You need to run now. You need to run and never come back here. And if you ever see this house again, anytime, anywhere, you run the other way." He let me go and took a step back. I went to ask him to come too, for us all four to escape together. But he was already shaking his head and mouthing, "Run." Paul and Stilly were already starting to notice something was wrong, and he turned to stop them. I realized I was free of whatever was holding me now, my body already backpedaling away as Mark looked back one last time. He didn't say anything, but I still felt it in my head. Run. So I did. I ran home, and when I got there, I spent 30 minutes hysterically trying to convince my parents of a version of things they would understand and believe. I already knew nothing would help, but I still had to try. And to their credit, within an hour, they had police and parents out there at the end of the street, looking for our three boys. Different people questioned me throughout the night, and by the time the sun was coming up, my parents had carried me out there again. There were crying, glaring parents, frantic in their angry, hopeful grief. There were officers and volunteers, all wearing the same look of exhaustion and frustration. And then there were my mom and dad, who never did treat me quite the same after that. Not that I really blame any of them, because the place where the house had been was empty. No building or boys, just an empty, overgrown lot with no sign of anyone being there, other than a couple of broken beer bottles at the edge of the grass. Of course it was all gone. I'd known it would be. Still, I had to try, didn't I? And I had to leave out the most important parts for them to believe any of it. In that moment, with them asking so many questions, wanting to accuse me of something, but not quite daring, I wanted to scream the truth at them, as terrible and impossible as it was. But I knew better. It wouldn't help anyone and would make things worse for me. So I stayed quiet. And when I was 18, I moved out and far away. I'm 33 now, and I've seen the house 5 more times. Every time I do the same thing, I stop before I get too close. I lift my hand in a small wave, greeting and farewell all in one. And then I run. Wow. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for staying with me. If you enjoyed these stories, give a like to help me bring even more chilling tales. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any gatherings by the fire. Your presence makes every story even more special. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and see you in the next story.